If you're buying someone a Mac, mostly I would have to say, well, obviously you're doing a great service. They're going to be really happy with it. But on the other end of that, if someone is asking for a Mac, they probably have a very specific brand, or not brand, but line. They want a MacBook Pro, they want a MacBook Air, an iMac. They kind of have probably told you what they want if you're actually in the market for buying someone a Mac. But I think it's maybe a good place to say what we shouldn't buy. So if someone is asking for this particular computer, maybe you tell them, you know what, hold off, I'll get it for you later. And I think the biggest one that I think of, at least right now, is the Mac Mini. If someone's asking for a Mac Mini, I would hold off just a few more months if you possibly can. I would not buy the M1 Mac Mini right now. Is there any other computer that you can think of, or do you agree with that?
100% agree. 27-inch iMac, do not buy that. Please, at all costs, do not buy that desktop. And see, this is where it gets tough. So I can think of two right off the bat. The one that's less controversial maybe is the 13-inch MacBook Pro that still exists with Touch Bar.
Yeah.
I don't think you should probably buy that. I think if you're going to commit to a MacBook Pro, just go to one of the newer ones.
Yeah, or get a MacBook Air.
Right.
But I'm sure you're going to mention MacBook Air right
that's my next point is MacBook Air. Now, here's what's tough. It's just rumors. It's just all rumors and speculation that next year we will get a MacBook Air. I think that that's probably a safe assumption that sometime in 2022 we will get a new MacBook Air. And unfortunately, the rumors point to a pretty significant update. Redesign, colors, new processor, better display, notch, MagSafe. It seems like this is actually going to be a pretty significant update. So again, I have to say that if your loved one or whoever you're buying this computer for kind of really likes the latest and greatest, I guess even not. This is tough because, yes, a new MacBook Air is coming, but we don't know when. So if you're thinking
it could be a whole year.
Exactly.
Honestly.
So I think that if you're thinking about buying a MacBook Air for your child, a teen, someone going off to college, the MacBook Air as it stands right now is not a bad way to go. It's a great machine. It's got the M1 processor inside, and oftentimes you can find them for a pretty good deal as well. So especially if there's a good deal on one, MacBook Air is not a bad way to go. But just to kind of give you the full picture here, a new MacBook Air is expected for next year. So just don't be blindsided when the update comes and it's totally new. Man, this one's tough, Matt. MacBook Pro is like an obvious recommendation, if you know someone's going to need that. But what would you say to someone who's looking for their high school senior about to go to college, or their middle school child going to enter a freshman in high school who needs a laptop? Do you recommend the MacBook Air? Because it's hard not to, but also it's hard to recommend it when you know something big is right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes back to always the same buying advice as always, which is if you need the computer, you got to get what's out right now. You can't be waiting on rumors because you just really never know what's going to happen. So if you do have a kid that needs a computer for school, or because they don't have one and you need a computer, then get it. The MacBook Air is perfectly fine. The only thing about it is that we kind of know that something new is coming, but that's kind of always the case. We have rumors of every single new computer. I guess the new MacBook Pro rumors have not started quite yet. Well, no, they actually have started. We've got rumors of the new MacBook Pro already. So there's always something new coming. So you can't really base anything on that. I would say definitely get the MacBook Air over the MacBook Pro 13-inch. There's not a big difference there, unless for whatever reason someone really wants a touch bar. Even then I'd say no, because the touch bar is gone on the other computer. So it's long for this world. So MacBook Air, definitely get that. 24-inch iMac, definitely buy that. There might be a chip update to that, but even if there was, I think you'll still be perfectly happy with the new redesign and all that. And then the MacBook Pros, like you said, of course. If you're, I don't know who in the world is doing this, but if you're looking to gift a Mac Pro, probably don't do that. But yeah, I don't think anyone's gifting a Mac Pro.
No.
Well, I don't know. I would love to know how many gifts of Mac Pro have ever happened.
You know
this
what?
New generation.
I'm not going to name names, but you and I both know someone who was gifted a Mac Pro a couple years back. So it has happened. I'll tell you that story. I
think I know, but I can't think of it. Really.
It's someone we know in the virtual world. So I'll leave it at that. But let's just say it has happened. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I probably would not recommend gifting a Mac Pro for multiple reasons. But I guess on that topic, if you know someone who is maybe a college student getting into film, graphic design, MacBook Pro, wonderful way to go. And then if you're looking for a family computer, iMac is, like Matt said, great way to go as well. So iMac and MacBook Pro, two easy recommendations. Maybe even like if you're looking for a parent, we'll get to the iPad in a minute. So maybe hold off until we talk about that. But if you're looking for someone who wants If you want someone who wants, like I'm thinking of like my parents, they like a nice desktop computer, something to put in the kitchen, put in the office. iMac is a wonderful way to go. And then again, for those who you know in your life who are a little bit more pro-focused students, I think like college students, MacBook Pro is a great way to go as well. So I think Macs are pretty easy recommendation there, right? I think that's kind of wraps up Macs.
Yeah, there's actually not that many options, so kind of is what it is. But that kind of brings us to the iPads, which you kind of brought up a point that I didn't even think about, which is for a lot of people, especially maybe the older generation, an iPad might be a better idea than a Mac. I know my grandparents use the iPad way more than they've used a desktop computer. My mom uses an iPad all the time, even though she does also use a desktop computer. So there's a lot of reasons why getting someone an iPad might be a better idea than a Mac. But also, on the same page, some people just want an iPad for an iPad. And this year, we have a lot of options. So we have the iPad Pros. Man, I struggle with the iPad Pros because compared to it's not like the Macs where the MacBook Pro is like clearly way better than all the other computers. The iPad Pro is technically better, but for the vast majority of people, I mean, I don't know. I don't see the real big reason, especially as a gift product, to need that over something like the iPad Air. Now, the iPad Air is a little older, so it's running the A14 Bionic
I believe
chip?
so, yes.
I believe it was the first product with the A14. Yeah, that's right, because they announced it before they announced the iPhone at their own event, and that was kind of weird that they announced the processor before they did the the iPhone. But, I mean, A14 chip's still great. You're not going to really notice anything bad there. But we also do have this new iPad mini, which for all intents and purposes is like the same feature set as the iPad Air, it's just smaller. It's so hard to judge who would want the iPad Air in real life because online, everyone loves it, but I've literally never heard anyone in my real life talk about it or care about it. So I don't know who would actually want that.
See, that's an interesting observation because in my mind, I think the iPad Air is like the perfect middle ground for almost everybody. I know my sister-in-laws are college age and high school age who love design and drawing, and they love to illustrate on the iPad, and the iPad Air is perfect for them because it uses the Apple Pencil. It's got the processor that can handle it. That makes a lot of sense. I feel like for a lot of people, just that nice form factor, you're getting Touch ID. I guess I don't know. Now the more that I think about it, maybe not. But I love the iPad Air. Has always been my de facto recommendation. And I think that you just get a little bit more of a premium experience and a little bit of a better experience with that over the kind of baseline cheapest app. And I think those are going to be the two biggest gifts. In my opinion, iPad is obviously an explosive category for sales. It always is like booming over the holidays. And one of the big questions for this year is really going to be, I think it's going to be iPad mini, regular iPad, or iPad Air. The iPad Pros are nice, but like you said, it's like the MacBook Pros. It's like you really got to know that someone's going to really push that device to its limits and really need all that power to really justify that purchase. I think it really comes down to the other three. And what would you say to someone who's looking to give just a good iPad for a family member? Maybe it's an elderly person, maybe it's an aunt or uncle or a parent. What is sort of your general de facto recommendation as the iPad most people should get? Because I'm torn between the regular iPad and the iPad Air, to be honest.
It's not even a question for me. It's the iPad Air. The regular iPad, I think, is for like a child. Like your first iPad. Like you're going to run some education software in there. It's for YouTube videos and entertainment. That's what I think that is. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other use cases for it, but that's just in my mind. That's like very much the entry-level iPad that you don't want to spend any money on or as little money as possible on, especially with some of the deals that you can find on them. The iPad Air is for the person who wants an iPad and they want the iPad experience and they plan on actually using the iPad for iPad things. You're getting the full experience there, like you said. I think that's the way to go over the cheapest iPad and definitely over the iPad Pro. I mean, the money is probably not worth it. Yeah, I'll be interested to see after this holiday season what the iPad mini sales are because I think that's when we're going to get our first real indication. Is this a product people want or is it just a product Apple decided to refresh one more time for whatever reason?
And I think speaking of iPad mini, as we give our recommendations, I'm a little hard-pressed to recommend the iPad mini. I'm not really sure who would really like that form factor. And also, because of the scrolling issues I had on mine, I'm still hesitant to recommend it to a lot of people anyway. So I don't think a child is the right person for the iPad mini. I think
It's
that
too expensive
it's
for
too
that. That's the
expensive.
problem. Yeah.
I think that most people who want an iPad, it's just too small. This is maybe a great secondary iPad if you're a multi-iPad person like Matt.
That's what I'm using mine for.
But I don't want to say don't buy the iPad Mini as like my recommendation for the holidays, but I probably wouldn't buy the iPad Mini unless you specifically know someone wants it for a very specific reason, because it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, especially because the iPad Air just makes way more sense.
Right. That's the thing. If the iPad Air didn't exist and it was iPad Mini or iPad Pro, then that's a different conversation. But considering you're getting basically just the iPad Mini experience in a bigger form factor, iPad Air is the way to go. Not to mention another gift idea. Maybe someone already has an iPad. Get them an Apple Pencil, maybe Apple Pencil 2, Apple Pencil 1, depending on which iPad they have. That would be a great gift, because I know for a lot of people they want that, but they're like, it's an extra $130. I don't know if I really need it. I'm not going to use it that much. Well, there you go. That's a good gift idea. That's not quite as much as the full price of an iPad. And then another thing would be keyboards. The Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pros. Oh, it doesn't work on the iPad Air, huh? Or does a Magic Keyboard work on the iPad Air?
I think it does.
Let me look.
I was not looking it up. I think it does. I think that the only one the Magic Keyboard doesn't work on is the regular iPad. So I think the iPad Air does support the Magic Keyboard. I want to say.
Okay, here we go. Compatible with 12.9-inch, 11-inch, and iPad Air.
Perfect.
So yes, it does. So
Great.
If you know someone with an iPad Air or iPad Pro, big or small, and they just had never bought the iPad Magic Keyboard because it is rather expensive, starting from $299, I think it's $350 for the bigger version. That would be an excellent gift, because that really does transform how you use the iPad. And honestly, like, if someone has never used it and you got them that, I think it would be as exciting as getting the iPad in itself, because the way that you use, well, maybe not as excited. I'm getting ahead of myself.
For me, it is.
You still need the iPad. Yeah, but for someone like you, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you probably wouldn't even use the iPad if you didn't have the Magic Keyboard, right?
Yeah, for me, the Magic Keyboard has totally transformed the iPad in my mind. It's made it this like tablet to something way more usable. I guess just because I like a traditional keyboard and mouse setup, so it just sort of makes sense. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, if you love your iPad, adding that Magic Keyboard is not a boring gift. It's actually kind of exciting, at least in my mind. And I think it just totally makes the iPad even more useful. So especially good. I mean, like you said, it's not cheap, so it's a not expensive. Well, it can be expensive. It's not a small chunk of change to put out for a accessory, but I do think that it adds a lot of value for the iPad owner in your life. Hey, you! Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Apple Circle podcast. If you want to check out the full episode, hit one of those videos right here, and also hit the other surprise video to see a surprise clip from the Apple Circle podcast. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and subscribe to the Apple Circle audio feeds and on all your favorite podcast platforms linked down below. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the main Apple Circle YouTube channel linked right down below.